Regardless of how much you studied, acing your exams actually just comes down to the art of writing exams. Yep, you heard me right. Writing exams is an art. And over the past 3 years, I've been able to score hundreds on countless midterms, countless exams, and even end off with hundreds in courses, all while studying engineering at university. And honestly, the only reason why I'm able to even get these marks is because I've mastered the art of writing exams. So in this video, I'm going to share a 7-step exam writing process that anyone can implement regardless of how much you studied to get an extra 10-20% on your exam. So let's get right into it. Before I get into what we should do when we get our exam paper, we need to make sure we're in the right state of mind to ace our exam. Most of the time, when we go to write our exam, we get super nervous, we get super anxious, and regardless of how much we study, we end up doing way below our expectations. So I think it's super important for us to build like an exam day routine so we can calm down and go into the exam ready to ace it. Obviously, this is gonna look different for everyone. Maybe you go to the gym, maybe you play video games, maybe you sleep in. Do whatever that makes you happy so you can calm down. My personal tips are: 1, don't do any schoolwork on the day of the exam, because when you do schoolwork, you can start thinking about the exam. That's going to make you more stressed out, not calm down. So just don't do any schoolwork on the day of the exam. Number 2 is, for the same reason, don't talk to your friends on the day of the exam as well, because when you talk to them, they're going to be like, oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? And that's going to make you feel like, oh, did I forget to study this? Did I forget to study that? It's just going to make you anxious even more. So don't talk to your friends at all. No friends for exam day. We'll talk to them later. Number 3 is to get some fresh air, go on a walk right before the exam. And I know it sounds a bit cliche, but honestly, just getting some fresh air has helped me so many times. Just get my mind off things and calm down and get ready for the exam. I know all this sounds super lame, but trust me, if you don't create an exam day routine, regardless of how much you study, regardless of whether or not you implement the steps in the rest of this video, you're always going to be anxious, you're always going to be nervous, and that means you're still going to end up messing up on the exam. So make sure to create an exam day routine. So after you walk into the exam, you don't talk to anyone, you're focused on your own thing, and then you get your exam paper. Step 2 is to rank the questions. So this step is not going to apply to multiple choice exams, but for every other exam style, you want to skim over all the questions, see what topics the questions are on, and rank the questions in terms of the topics you're most comfortable with and the least comfortable with. So if like question 6 is looking at factoring and question 7 is looking at differentiation, I'm more comfortable with factoring, so that's gonna be higher up on my list, and differentiation is gonna be lower up my list. When writing exams, you wanna start off with questions and topics that you're most comfortable with, so you can build some momentum and confidence, and that'll help you answer the rest of the questions on the exam. Now that we established the order in which we'll tackle the exam, we need to figure out how much time we're gonna spend on each question on the exam. If your exam is multiple choice, and say you have like 90 minutes to do 60 questions, your first instinct will be like, okay, yeah, 90 minutes divided by 60 questions means 1.5 minutes per question. And that seems okay, but what if when you're writing the exam, one multiple choice question is super hard, it ends up taking you 5 minutes. Now you're just gonna be scrambling and rushing the rest of the exam to try to get everything done. So what I like to do is create a strategy to split up my time to give myself a buffer in case I come up against challenging questions. So for multiple choice exams, what this looks like is you wanna take a third of your time and put it to the side. And so for example, if our exam is 90 minutes, we're gonna take 30 minutes and put it to the side. And for the rest of the time, so in this example, 60 minutes, we wanna use that time and split it among the questions. So 60 minutes to do 60 questions means we're gonna spend 1 minute per question. I know the numbers here are just an example, but you should be able to apply the same process regardless of how much time you have and regardless of how many questions you have. All you're gonna do is spend the allocated time for each question trying to actually do the question. So for our case, you're gonna spend 1 minute per question. And if you can get it right within that 1 minute, great. But if you can't, then what you're gonna do is circle in your best guess and put a big star beside the question. One thing I want to say is that you really need to spend that whole 1 minute trying to attempt a question. You can't just go and put stars on all the questions because that's going to mess this whole thing up. So actually spend that 1 minute, try your best to answer the question. And if you still can't get it right, then put the star and move to the next question. So back to what I was saying, after you follow this process and you get through all the questions, you're still going to have a third of your exam time left. So what you want to do is with that third of the time, so for us it's going to be 30 minutes, you're going to go over all those questions that you put a star on and try to put more time trying to answer these questions. Allocating time using this method works really well because you're spending more time on more challenging questions while also not having to worry that you're not going to be able to finish the exam and lose out on easy marks. And on top of that, when you have this timing figured out, you don't have to sprint like as fast as you can to try to finish the exam. Whenever you rush, you're way more likely to make careless mistakes, and this is going to cost us a lot of time and a lot of marks. and this actually happened to me in my dynamics exam, which I'll talk about in step 5. We can use a similar method to allocating time for other exam styles as well. For more short answer type of exams, the only change you want to make to this process is you want to leave less time at the end to come back and look at challenging questions again. Like if you have 1 hour to do these 5 questions, instead of putting 1/3 of the time, which is 20 minutes on the side, and spending 8 minutes per question, what you could do instead is put 10 minutes on the side and spend 10 minutes per question. And why am I doing this? Well, I'll explain that right now in step 4, to skip or not to skip. Actually, before I get to that, I'd really appreciate it if you can like, subscribe, and in return, I promise to create more quality videos like this one. So back to our step-by-step process, one of the big mistakes that I sometimes made when writing exams during first year is I would look at a question for like 3-4 minutes, I'll be like, oh, that's too hard, and immediately just skip and go to the next question. Skipping questions is useful because you don't want to end up spending a lot of time on one question and not having enough time to do the other questions on the exam. But on the other hand, if you don't give yourself enough time to attempt each question, you're gonna just end up wasting a lot of time skipping questions. I know that was really confusing. Let me explain to you what I mean. The more challenging and critical thinking a question is, the more time you're gonna have to spend staring at the question, just thinking about what to do before you have any clue on how to start. But after you have that light bulb moment, I promise you the rest of the question is probably really easy and you can finish it in a few minutes. But if you just give up too early and stop this process and move on to the next question, you're gonna end up wasting a lot of time, like half attempting questions, not getting anywhere, and just moving to the next question. When we sit down and spend like 5-10 minutes being patient with our brain, I promise you'll probably figure it out. So to recap, there are 2 things we need to keep in mind. We have to make sure we spend enough time on each question so our brain actually has time to think about what to do. But we also don't want to spend too much time on each question because that means we'll end up not having enough time for the rest of the exam. Finding this balance is super difficult, but that's why the splitting up the time method in step 3 works really well. It finds a balance between the 2 sides. For multiple choice questions, you're allocating 1/3 of your time on the side to come back into challenging questions. As the exam gets more and more challenging, more critical thinking, and more longer style questions, we want to reduce this time that we put at the end and spend more time attempting each question and trying to solve it in one go. This way, we can maximize the effort our brain has already put in trying to figure out how to solve these long, critical thinking questions. Just to reiterate, if you have like 2.5 hours to do 5 long critical thinking style questions, don't even bother putting any time at the end to come check over your work. Just spend 30 minutes per each question trying to figure out and trying to solve the question on one go. And yes, this does mean we're not allocating time to check over work, but honestly, if you're spending 15 minutes to check a 2.5 hour exam, all you're gonna end up doing is flipping through the pages and you're not gonna find any mistakes. By giving ourselves more time to do each question, we can pace ourselves out, we can take our time, and this means we're less likely to make careless mistakes and there's no need for us to check our exam. So to recap, we're tackling questions in a specific order, we're pacing ourselves out, but inevitably, at some point at the exam, you're just gonna be completely stuck and you have no clue what to do. And if you reach that point, then implement step 5, nothing to lose, everything to gain. So at the end of first year, when I was doing my dynamics exam, I spent 30 minutes on a question only to get to part C and realize that I forgot to include friction in my free body diagram. And going into that exam, I really wanted to get a 70 or an 80 to get a 4.0 on the course. And when I realized that I made such a silly and like massive mistake, I kind of completely shut down and my brain stopped working and I completely gave up. In that moment, what I was trying to tell myself is maybe the 4.0, which is like an 85, is gone. But if I don't try to genuinely do the rest of the questions on the exam, there's a good chance I can even end up getting a 70, 60, or 50 in the course. But thinking like that honestly just made me feel worse, and I honestly couldn't do the rest of the questions. What I feel like we can do instead is instead of going to exams thinking, okay, we need an 80 to get a 4.0 on this course, we need a 60 to pass. We can maybe think about like, okay, I'm at a 75 right now, and every mark I get on the exam will get me closer and closer to 4.0. Or I'm at a 35 right now, and every mark I get on this exam will get me closer and closer to passing. It's almost the same message, but just phrased in a nothing to lose, everything to gain way. And I feel like, at least for myself, it helps me focus less on the marks that I just lost and focus more on the marks that I still have to gain, still could gain in the rest of the exam. Now that's great, but sometimes, even if you're in the right mindset, it's just so hard to get your brain to work. If that's the case, as a last resort, use step 6, just scribble. So going back to my dynamics exam, step 5 didn't really work to me because after I was confused on that question, I still had 2 more questions on the exam that I had no clue what to do. And with 15 minutes to go, I just decided to copy down any relevant formulas, put anything on the page that I can think of, and just call it a day. Essentially, just scribble and leave nothing blank. I was only actually able to answer 2 of the 5 questions on that exam, which is like 40%. But because I scribbled and just wrote random stuff, I was able to get a 66% on the exam. So that's pretty much all you could do to maximize your marks on this exam. Step 1 is about getting the right mindset, and step 2 to 6 is about what you can do during the exam to maximize your marks and get the extra 10-20% that we all want. I could end this video right here and ask you to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, but the truth is, most of us don't only have one exam. In high school, university, and college, we have like 5 exams in a span of 2-3 weeks, and for us to do well on all these exams, we have to implement step 7, Refuel. When you're writing exams, you've just been fully focused for 2-3 hours straight. So go ahead and give yourself a rewarding break. Buy a donut or something, go for a walk, play video games. Only if you give yourself this rewarding break, you'll have any sort of motivation to get up tomorrow and start studying for your next exam. I know it can be hard sometimes, but your last exam has no impact on how you perform on your next exam. So go ahead, you have nothing to lose, everything to gain. Let's start off by putting the right foot forward. I was going to start off the video by saying this, but I felt like everyone would click off because it sounds so lame. But the truth is, you have to eat, sleep, and rest well to have any chance of doing well on your exams. If you're staying up all night trying to cram information, do this extra bit of studying, trust me, you're just going to be super exhausted during the exam. You're not going to be able to fully concentrate. You're going to end up making a lot of careless mistakes, and then you're going to end up losing a lot of marks. Trust me, that extra bit of studying is not worth it. If you found this video useful and you still have time to study for your exams, I would highly recommend you check out this video right here on how to study for math, chemistry, and physics exams, all these technical exams. Trust me, it's one of the best videos I created, and I'm sure you'll find it helpful. And with that being said, thank you for watching, good luck on your exams, and I'll see you next time.